August 2nd, 2021 meeting of the Select Board to order. Could we open with the pledge, please?
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I thought I would just follow the same process that we've done in the past and go around and get inputs from everybody, and then we can go back around and talk about them and prioritize and decide what we want to put on the list. My thought here was when we go around the table the first time around, just say the goal and I'll capture it so everybody can see the same thing. If you have clarifying questions, that's okay, but let's not try to debate the merits of the goal the first time around. Let's just try to capture what's on everybody's mind, and then we'll go back and look at what we've got. Does that make sense? And then we can, the next step, we can talk about filling in we had 3 columns last year. My thought was maybe use what's in the HR guidance, which is the goal, and how is it going to be measured and by when. I think we had expectations and results, which kind of is how's it going to be measured, so we could probably collapse that. But
Mark, do you have a question?
No, I think what I have mainly are concepts for goals, not completely thought through, because I think in some cases they may be more
that's
better
fine.
suited with others.
Yeah, it doesn't have
other
to be a
groups.
detailed thought at this
Yeah.
point. We'll just capture what the ideas are. So I'm going to try to stand under this microphone. Anybody want to start with their list? Pat, what's on your list?
Well, first of all, I know last year we had quite an extensive list, and a lot of those are going to, take obviously more than the year. So I don't know if you wanted to go, put those first.
Whatever you've got.
Okay, so the ones that I saw that would be carried over from last year would be obviously the sewer capacity.
I'm going to see if I can get a fatter marker.
The Warren Poll Farm, the conservation restriction, I know there's been some work done on that, but we still have a little bit of finalizing to do on that. Next steps on the fire stations. And I don't remember if it was on there, the follow-up on PFAS, follow through, I guess you could say, on the PFAS issue at Richardson Road. And then a couple of new ones. One is the next part of the policies. The main policy book is done, except for that one policy that I missed I need to add in, but having to do with CVL licenses and alcohol licenses. I have met with Christina on that, and we should have something to bring forward soon. Part of the deal is we wanted to, maybe I'm going into too much detail on it, but we wanted to kind of set that up into different sections, so somebody who wants just a CVL doesn't have to read through all the alcohol parts of it, so make it multi-part. But anyway.
CVL?
Yeah,
Common-
common victular license, yeah, which,
I thought you said CDL.
Oh, yeah.
I was like,
Yeah,
commercial
I
driver's
was
license.
Well, yeah, we could do that, too.
Okay.
And as we mentioned last Monday, what to do about the COVID funds. Do some outreach on that, what the suggestions might be on it. And then I've had a couple of people, kind of as a follow-up to something that we talked about a couple of months ago, to have some kind of longer-term or more finalized version of what to do on the common. maybe a landscaping plan. I was thinking like a way to have the sound work better there, because I went to the community band concert a couple of weeks ago, and it's hard to hear. And I think if there were some way that we could put in a sound system all around the common to make it, I don't know how we would do that to also protect it from the weather, but I know other places do that. Like even, the Veterans Park I know has something.
So you're looking for a common redesign?
Yeah, basically, well, a redesign and then rules for it.
We can talk about what that means, but just
Yeah.
in concept.
Yeah,
Okay,
so that's all I had.
okay. Who wants to go next?
I'll go.
Okay,
I have a lot of those too, but
that's fine. Any new ones?
on the.
Or
on-
expansion?
Yeah, on the ARPA funds, for me, it's more what the process would be in order to kind of prioritize. How to establish the list and prioritize what our recommendations would be
Yep,
coming from here. Another one I have is succession planning. And this could be every year, improve website communications. And I know that, what I keep always hearing is, we won an award for our website a few years ago, and now it seems like there seems to be more issues with, people having trouble finding what they're looking for. So I'm just wondering if there's a way that we could address that.
yep. You guys don't need to see the TV, right? Okay.
One I was thinking about, and I don't know if it goes here or not, but I've noticed that there aren't minutes for all the boards and committees that we have in town.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if we should be going through that and looking at that, and trying to make a decision on that. Because if we're not getting minutes and so forth, what really are the boards doing?
Yeah, I think that's more a responsibility of the clerk, and sometimes the clerk, somebody on the clerk's office does reach out to the different
Yeah.
committees, because I've been pinged a couple of times to get.
Well, I have,
Yeah, 'cause
If
I always-
added like status, education, enforcement, something like that.
That's
Yeah.
fine.
Because
That's-
I've noticed there's committees that haven't made minutes since they were
No,
created.
I know, and I've
Sure.
gone on there to try to read up and get familiar with what's going on in the different committees, and it's, obviously, for me, it's impossible to get caught up unless if I reached out and sat with somebody, but I think there should be minutes. If you're gonna have a board or committee, there should be minutes. And again, this may be out of our purview, but, not just back to school, but also for town buildings, et cetera, with COVID. I don't know if that would fit under the other issues, but I'm just wondering how we're going to be prepared if the trends go negative, and, what the process is to do that. Is there something that we need to do? Is there funding that we need to reserve? I don't know.
Yeah.
And under the sewer issue, I still have to look at what the root cause is and how that may affect, other boards, and just to formalize a process for input from the staff within the town to the boards, because that's really what I've never been able to find. Maybe that's just because I don't know where to look for it, but.
Okay.
And again, this may be one that falls under kind of what Pat was talking about, but on the select boards, I'm trying to work on minutes distribution. Should we update our policies on that? So that the next clerk that comes in will be able to follow that with some guidance to help them through the process, because it's kind of changing.
You're talking about the process in
Yeah.
addition to. okay.
Yeah, the process.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's what I have.
Ken, do you have any more?
yes, you guys hit all the major ones, but just to expand a little, on sewer capacity, I said sewer capacity / need potential for expansion.
I think the 21 goal was supposed to lay out like different options of,
Okay.
that might be an option.
In the Warren poll, I had that marked off. I kind of called it the Warren poll reboot,
Okay,
because to me, in talking with 3 or 4 of the parties involved, I think there might be a need to start and get them all on the same page from the beginning again, instead of, but, then I had those. Mark had mentioned root cause. I said root cause and potentially for other services offered in the town, which was behind you, I think. Just to make sure we, whatever we come up with as root cause for sewer, we should make sure there's procedures in town to protect the other key services we offer to the residents.
extended to that basically.
Sort of, I guess, I had it separate, but it could go under ARPA COVID funds, or, because to me, it's all part of cost and budgeting. My fear is if there's a resurgence in this Delta virus, that we could be back in financial problems with lockdowns and so forth, so maybe just sort of keeping a side eye on the budget if things start to go backwards, which
Is
is,
that part of?
yeah.
So, is it a separate one, or is it part of, it's the process and the execution?
I guess with Mark's COVID prep, if trends go negative, I guess it would be in there.
This would also be financial?
Yeah.
Financial?
Yeah, I think so.
And then my last one kind of blew up in my face last year, but I'm going to try it again. If we could maybe come up with a budget that's 2.5% increase instead of over that, if it's possible, as a goal. That was my list, on top of what everybody already said.
Okay. So, on my, Paul, do you have anything?
No, I'll let you go as a
Okay.
fourth board member, or I'll jump in.
I'm gonna wear 2 hats tonight, which I'm not supposed to do, but, so one of the potential goals I wrote down was for a select board, town manager, independently facilitated working session to try to help us with our working relationship between the board members and between Paul and the board. So, and that would be bringing somebody in from the outside and maybe doing it off-site in a neutral place that could still have public access, so. I'd like to expand on my thoughts for fire station. I know that, right now, the status says that chief recommends we do engine 3 next and then look at 4 and 5. But I think that what this goal was we had gotten the criterion report as an input, not as a final data document on which to make decisions. And at one point, we were going to set up a committee so that the firefighters and somebody from the select board and Paul and the chief could kind of collaboratively look at what other data and audits and analyses have been done. So I'd still like to see that process happen before we jump into
So maybe
fund engine 3 next.
Right, so fire station next step / committee?
Yeah.
Or rationalization.
I wrote it down as the collaborative committee analysis or something like that, but I'll just, since we're not debating right now, I'll write my words down. Okay. I had PFAS. I had a thought here, I don't know if, I called it 54 Richardson Road future use. Depending what happens with PFAS, and I know it's been talked about using that as like open space in the past, and I know that would require looking at different type operations that are being run there and elsewhere, but I just wanted to capture the thought. I had Warren Cole. Um, And then I had a number of thoughts that, I know we couldn't do them all, but I had kind of this category of thinking with public works infrastructure. And my thought here was, is there anything more we want to do on traffic? Paul, you had mentioned sidewalk listening session or something like that, right? I flagged Ledge Road because I think we
Yeah.
have to go revisit some
Good.
things on that we had put aside before. I randomly wrote down quick fix because I know that there's been kind of a backlog of quick fix. And then this seems to be hopeless every time we bring it up, but I'm wondering if we maybe want to have some kind of bigger look at the road infrastructure and if we need to go get more money from the state or elsewhere, reallocate funding. But we've got some places in town where our road infrastructure, I think, could use improvement. And I know that's challenged by funding, but that was my thought. And then the other thought that I had was, do we want to look at the town meeting warrant article process? Again, without discussion, I don't know if there's anything to be had here, but my thinking was, more than once, we've had articles that we can't say no to, but they get rushed onto the warrant, in my opinion, before they're ready. So like, we had 2 sets of articles in the spring that were, the words were in the warrant before like the planning board had even finished with their public process and finalized what they wanted. So I don't know if this is worth a look. I don't know that we're doing anything that's not legitimate, but maybe there's improvements we could make to the process or suggest to the people on the process.
Yeah, I was actually going to have something kind of related to that, to see if maybe there could be a way that we can prohibit amendments on the floor. Because I think that's what really confuses people when, you know, you
Yeah,
saw...
but right now, that's the only way to fix it when we have stuff
Well,
that-
then the other way to fix it is to table it.
Yeah, move it, right, exactly. I thought that was an odd
All right, so,
situation.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna throw this out, but I'm wondering if, like, what's the 1 to 3 year look for the town departments, you know, just kind of from a strategic thinking standpoint? And that may be too much to bite off and chew, but I'm just wondering if it's worth at least a discussion in the coming year to say, do we want to do more besides the master plan, which is really a land use managed document. Because we did the vision and values, and if we look at different departments, do they have, or different boards and committees, like, would it help to codify what is that more forward-looking vision? So that was the end of my thoughts. So let me
So
ask.
Paul, do you have some now?
Let
Jen,
me
you got
ask-
one more person too.
But
Oh,
Paul,
I'm sorry, Paul. Sorry.
No paper left, Paul.
That's all right, sorry. Yeah,
You put me off and then I forgot about you.
No, it's all right. I'll throw a lot of things out there. First one, I just would put under communication. And I just think as a concept, I mean, we've got to realize that it's not the same in 2021 as it was in previous years, meaning our local newspaper coverage is weak, okay, in terms of we've got a shared reporter, and most people don't buy the newspaper. And so one of the things I think that's a constant theme is getting word out to residents, getting information out to residents, in terms of, and it kind of goes to the issue about website and information and so
Yep,
forth. So I think communication to residents is a real important concern that I would share with you. Some other things in, I think the whole issues of inclusion and diversity shouldn't be, should be under consideration in terms of supporting the DEI committee, appointing diverse committees, employing diverse workforce, even purchasing from diverse suppliers. I think the whole diversity thing is still out there. And I think the corollary to that is the multi-generational, the age-friendly, community, livable, allowing people to remain in the community, those type of issues. I did have I think that's sort of under the COVID thing about the air quality and the environment in the school buildings as well as other buildings. I did, in contrast to, well, I will leave it up about the budget thing. I think is fine. Talk about that.
Up here?
Yeah, exactly. Air quality. Road construction you had on there. 255 Princeton Street, the future, the UMass West Campus, I think. And I think that goes to the big issue in terms of if that's going to the 3 year look. So you're thinking, where do we want to go, folks? I mean, you're talking about master plans and so forth. I mean, what is it that we're striving to? Because if you don't know where you want to get to, it's hard to have hard goals to get to. And I think that's an example of it. We saw it last year with the rejection of the Grist Mill 2, the question at town meeting about the fulfillment centers on River Neck Road. And I think and that sort of tied into sewer capacity, everything else is, what is the desire in terms of development in the community? I know we remember it started back when about the 129 redevelopment and so forth, but we're now in a different realm in terms of the housing development. I mean, you saw the reaction of an email over the weekend about a duplex or a triplex, but and you're seeing it in terms of the issues about redevelopment at the West Campus and so forth. So I think 255 Princeton is important.
Paul, a clarifying
Yeah.
question. If this becomes a rezoning effort, what do you see the select board's role in that in terms
I
of
think-
goals?
I think it goals in terms of what is it that we're striving to. In other words, you can put 255 Princeton / housing supply.
Okay.
The question is what is the, you've got a governor who's trying to create 100 housing units. You've got people who are priced out of town or high price. The housing shortage, the whole thing about housing supply and vision would be helpful. You've got the PFAS. Let's go on to the next page. Clean energy and sustainability, I think, it's got to be up there in terms of the whole initiative from the town meeting, as well as the whole sustainability issue. I'll offer another one, related to the town center parking. Addressing that, because I think that's going to come to us because of the whole discussion regarding that parking lot in the center and the fact that that's sort of now the last piece remaining, as well as the former site we're across the by the library parcel, the vacant parcel, that whole plan for the center. And even the Brook Walk, right? Is that now still a town center parking / Brook Walk?
What about the Brook Walk relative to the select board?
Again, do we foster efforts in terms of grants and other efforts to develop that and work with the planning board, or is that now? I don't know where that stands at this point. So I think that would be a question. I'm not sure you've got up there. I think the other one would be cybersecurity vigilance. I think we can't lose a focus on cybersecurity concerns, because they're certainly out there, and I think that's something we have to keep an eye on.
I think it's interesting that so many organizations think they don't need to worry about that because they have it all set. They're not going to be attacked, and that to me is the worst thing to have in your mind, that you don't need to worry about it because you feel like you're secure enough. So yeah, I think that's definitely
That's a good one.
I mean, especially in the time of Zoom where we got photobombed like
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, that's what I'm thinking too, with that requirement, that might even be able to come under ARPA funds too.
So I think that's it. I think that's what I have.
Okay.
Good luck, Paul.
Thanks.
any saved rounds?
Paul, with the 255 Princeton Housing Supply Vision,
Yeah.
could we also put business in there? On the business side, in other words, what's our vision for housing, business?
Sure.
Yeah, because I'm wondering, because it's kind of the whole package when you think about sewer, utilities,
Yeah.
space.
Yeah, I mean, if,
You know,
if there's a desire to not grow the community, then that's gonna affect the sewer capacity decision.
Right.
I mean, I was thinking the same as business, because you brought up 129, and, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, the whole focus was developing commercial on 129. The shift was so dramatic and so fast to residential, and then when COVID hit, really, commercial office spaces obliterated. I mean, it just, so I mean,
Right.
what an amazing swing it's been.
Mm.
Can I throw a related idea out here that I didn't, it's on my paper, but I didn't put it out. I had jotted down this idea of, we had like the racial equity listening session last year. And someone had suggested to me, should we have an LGBTQ plus listening session? Because from my perspective, it keeps getting reduced to flags and a flag policy. And maybe there's more meat that we need to understand behind that. So that was a thought that I had. Because you have the committee, but you also have like Rainbow Chelmsford and other independent groups. So I'll just throw that out. And
I was just wondering, because I thought about that, but should the committee be doing that as opposed to us? Because I feel like sometimes we undermine some of our
If
committees.
we decide to do something like that, I
Yeah.
think we talk about who does it, or do we do it jointly, or
Yeah,
invite their
okay.
participation, would be my thought. And then I forgot one over here, I didn't know if we wanted to look at, and this may be more in the weeds or something, we don't work as an annual goal, but I had captured it as communications, basically, to the board. So we seem to be having like repetitive times where we're like, we don't want 100 pages, we want something kind of laid out
Mhm.
with the thought process and something we can track meeting after meeting to make things more efficient. I think it would make things more efficient and also on our time and the people who are reporting.
Right.
I didn't know if we wanted something like that to be in the formal objectives or not, or if it's just something we work on.
I'd like it.
Okay, any other saved rounds? So I guess we could do one of two things. We could all come up and, put some check marks into the things we think are the highest priorities. We could talk about these for a little bit, see if there's things that can be combined verbally. Maybe we should just verbally talk about where we think the highest priorities are before we, or are we going to try to do 4 pages worth?
You have too many goals, you have no goals, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think some, I think the major ones obviously need to have their own separate particular goal, and some of the others can fall as like sub-goals to there.
Okay, so say more, Pat. What do you see as major, like sewer capacity, Warren Pole, the ones that were separate before?
Right, yeah, I think those, those ongoing ones definitely have to be, I mean, and the sewer capacity, I mean, maybe that does roll into, the vision for what the town is going to be, as Paul was saying. Is it housing a lot of places? Is it focus on business? How do we do that? I mean, it's when, 255 Princeton and the housing and the business, that's not just sewer, but that is an important part of it.
It almost comes under more a strategic heading.
I agree there's an interrelationship. I would be reluctant to fold sewer capacity under something else right now. I think we still need to keep
Well, I think if anything,
our
it's the
eye
other
on
way
that
around.
analysis.
Yeah, right.
So are there any that we agree are going to stay on as goals of their own right now? Like if I were to go tick off sewer capacity, Warren Pole, fire station, PFAS, was there agreement on all those?
I mean,
The
those are
ARPA
probably the
COVID
big
funds.
4.
What?
Those are probably the big 4.
And the ARPA funds. I
ARPA
think
funds,
everybody's
pretty
said.
big too.
So we said yes to this one. This one's okay, right? I'm just thinking in terms of saying what are some of the big hitters here. And this probably would we want to combine this or keep them as two separate but related? Because this is probably as equal importance,
Mhm.
right?
It could go both ways.
You guys okay if I check this one too? The COVID prep?
Yeah, I think so.
Well,
Safety's kind of important.
and I think the sewer root cause, since that's a carryover. I can ask a different question. Are there any that you think are down at the bottom of the list? That are important, but maybe not as important to chew off this year?
I might even move cybersecurity up to the top too.
What do people think about that? What, say more, Mark?
Well, it could be at the top or it could be underneath the ARPA's, but I think that needs to get closer to the top because, you know, all you're gonna need is one hack to shut the whole thing down and lose everything you have here, so. And it seems to be more and more prevalent, so it seems like it's a kind of an important thing to do.
Everyone else, what do you think?
I agree with Mark.
You agree with Mark? Pat, you okay?
Sure.
I think it's a very substantial threat,
Yes,
and it could cost the town dearly.
Okay.
If you got
Exactly.
in it, yep. I would say, the town common plan might be able to be rolled into town parking. You know, the brook walk and all that.
More like a center plan?
Yeah. I don't know if, I don't want to negate it on you, Pat, but
Mhm.
I'm just wondering if it can be all put into one.
Well, yeah, I know the Center Village Master Plan Committee was working on like the Brook Walk and things like that. But I don't think,
Give them some jurisdiction over to the town common?
I mean, we could, I mean, we could, sure. I'm fine with
Ken, I'm
you
having
know.
a hard time hearing you.
I just said, that could we give the center plan committee some jurisdiction over the town common?
Ask them for recommendations.
Paul, what are your
I mean,
thoughts?
operational jurisdiction or planning? I don't understand what you'd ask them to do.
Not operational.
No, not operational, like,
The plan.
I know there was a talk, I hear what Pat's saying, because there was a talk a couple of years ago about the way the paths run and the way the trees, because we've taken some trees down on the common to
Right.
beautify it. At the same time, if you were to do some arborvitae plantings to allow the sound to echo back into the park instead of out.
Maybe that would work,
Maybe
too.
some speakers that are underground, so that,
Yeah.
but all of that should be done at once. If you're gonna redo new walks, you want to make sure the wires underground need to go where they need to go, and the trees should go where they should go.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering if someone
Yeah,
in the
well,
center
the
plan
plan.
could
Yeah.
look at that.
Yeah.
You know, with the tree committee, with the center, with the DPW, and
Yeah, with the Historic District,
Historic
too.
District
Historic
Commission, yeah, that's
District,
what I was
yeah.
thinking.
Because they have a big say on that, too.
or we did take a few trees down on the common,
Right.
and there is definitely some shade missing there now.
Mhm.
So are we thinking if we include this, we combine it with that, the other one somehow?
Yeah, that's fine,
yeah.
yeah.
Paul,
sense.
I want Paul's thoughts on that.
What's that?
I keep seeing your fur, your brow. Are you okay with those?
Yeah.
Because they come off our plates at that point if we send it
Well, I
over.
don't know if they come off
Off
our
the plate.
plate.
No,
I
but it's
mean,
not. We oversee it instead of
Right.
roll up
Instead
our
of
sleeves and
actually
get
doing it.
involved in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's you know, it's a big parcel. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a unique parcel in the whole
is.
community.
It is.
And I think that's where, Historic District comes in and, for years I've sought a tree planting plan. I mean, as you said, the trees have been removed, but nothing has been, it's sort of a work incomplete. I mean, you don't,
But you seemed like you might have had a thought about it, like you didn't think this was a good idea, so.
No, I think even the tree committee, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I said, where are you sending it to?
But like Pat said, so if it's overall, it's trees, it's speakers, it's landscaping, it's, the whole setup, so that, we're not just doing this, that, and the other thing
Right.
without a whole plan.
Yeah.
Would be more efficient to do it that way, then we could prioritize how it would, stage out and get done.
I mean, I think the whole
Yeah.
tree thing goes to North Road. I mean, it should go out. I mean, you ride by St. Mary's, you ride by, that whole area up until the interstate, the off-ramp. I mean, that's a gateway into the city into the town that's unique. But it's barren of trees, even in front of the old town hall.
Right.
Yeah,
No,
historically.
I agree. I actually,
And I think that, I mean,
Yeah.
in a few years, as Pat knows, there will be a resurfacing and an underground utilities on Chelmsford Street. But that doesn't have the landscaping opportunity that is unique, I think, to North Road.
especially you come off 495, you
Yeah.
make that turn. It'd be beautiful if you had maple
Exactly.
trees on both sides,
Exactly,
giving you a
come all the way
runway.
down, and then
Canopy, yeah.
and a canopy on the commons. I mean, so I think so I would expand that common
Oh, that's fine.
plan to
Good.
North Road, Gateway, because I think that's
Up to
something.
the end of the historic district?
Yeah, edge of the historic district.
Because the district does end
But we've
at-
discussed this before,
Yeah.
but I just don't know how to make it go somewhere.
Right. I
Well,
think the problem is,
it's-
who does it land with? Is it the tree committee, the DPW, is it the Center Village committee?
It
Is
almost
the-
needs to be this
Almost needs
joint,
almost
a
like a
joint
summit.
committee.
Almost need
yeah.
like a summit where you need it.
A joint committee with members of all those.
Yeah.
Jim's gonna kill me for saying this. I don't think it should land with I think we should take some advice from the tree
Right,
committee,
no,
but
but I'm
not
just
land
saying.
it with the tree
Right,
committee.
right.
But I think
But I
they should
think-
be part of it.
May-
Yeah.
So if we're gonna keep this as an objective, maybe the objective is the first step in the objective is to figure out how to approach it, who's involved, and what that looks like.
Yeah, like a joint sessions
Yeah.
or whatever.
Because, like
Alright,
you said, it could be
so I'm
beautiful.
just gonna,
Larger center beautification project?
Expanded, yeah.
Yeah.
this one,
Oh, I-
and this one are,
Yes.
I mean, even the trees down, I mean, it's too bad, but as you go through the center by Jack Hamley's, there's no trees there either.
Right.
And I know there've been challenges over the years with, with trees, even by the by the library, Adams Library. I mean, it's a shame that, and if there's some solution, as you know, we've been looking at it in Vinyl Square for a few years now about tree planting and portable, everything else, and I think that ought to go into the whole center as well. It's,
I mean, we could even involve at least one of the garden clubs
Yeah.
in town, because they do the Arbor Day plantings, and they almost always plant trees somewhere.
So we had one there that said center parking, vacant parcel.
the star
and
here
Brook-
and the star there, meaning we're gonna combine
Yeah, does
these.
parking stick with that, or,
Yeah.
Well,
because
it
vacant
could be
parcel
with that,
Brookwalk
It could
does.
also be part of this public works.
Well, that's what I was
structure.
wondering, if parking should go there, and then vacant parcel and Brookwalk should go, but, go either way.
Well, I think it's all part of the center when you.
Yeah, I do
There's not a
too.
lot of, I mean, to cut it down to the bone here, as far as the center goes with parking, there's not a ton of spots to capitalize on.
There's not much more we can do.
Right, the municipal lot, I'm sure, I think what Paul was alluding to is the owners of that probably are open to selling it to the town.
yeah, they're gonna do something.
Right, and that's become more and more apparent. And that's probably the biggest improvement you can do to parking in the center, other than, I don't know. I mean, yes, the land where the mobile used to be, but I don't even know how you foster that into some type of a result with the standoff that's going on between the two pieces, right?
Unless you do eminent domain
Yep.
Well, you can still do a plan without actually
Yeah.
executing that portion of it.
or develop a vision.
Yeah.
Since we're obviously gonna have to talk about some of these, I'm gonna just go back and we're gonna just go through and talk and see what falls out. Is that all right?
Sure.
But the sewer capacity, that's town manager. You still think that's just the town manager?
Mhm.
There's not much Paul's managing that process. Warren Paul, is that town manager or both?
Yeah, I mean, where that's at, just so you know, is that last week, the commission sent the draft restriction to the land trust for comment, and are asking to meet to review what hopefully would be the restriction. And hopefully, if that gets through, then I think we're on our way.
Right,
The
well, this
question
was
is if that
a
gets
town
through.
manager goal. Is there any problem leaving it as town manager?
Yeah, I mean, I can produce the report. I mean, I think
Yeah, it's
the
the
decision
final
regarding the sewer
decision, yeah.
capacity is not mine.
Oh,
I
no, it's not-
understand.
Yeah, yeah,
No,
no,
she's talking about one pole.
I'm just.
Foreign poll, sure. I mean, I
Alright,
can move that
Fire
forward.
station, that was town manager. Is there any problem leaving that town manager? We'll go back to measurements and stuff later. I just want to figure out we're keeping it, whose is it, or we're not doing it this year. Alright. The PFAS right now is town manager. I don't think we. Policies and license, I think we have to clean up the policies and
That's select
licenses,
board.
but this is select board, right? Okay, the COVA funds, this is, I think this, what I'm hearing is we want a joint process, so is this a joint
I
goal?
think so.
Yeah, you control the money, so it's clearly a select board in terms of the process and prioritization.
But we do need you to bring to us.
Sure, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it should be a
That's
joint.
probably a joint one, yeah.
Alright,
Yeah,
so
I
I'm
think
gonna
it's a
put this
good
as
joint
town
goal.
manager, select board. This town, the town, what are we gonna call this? The town center
Oh.
extended.
Town center beautification,
Planning.
enhancement, beautification, town center plan.
We should come up with some neat name that they're not gonna make, so if it's town,
Yeah.
All right, why don't we come back to the name when we do measurements? So we were agreeing, I think, that we want this on the list, right?
Yes.
Okay, so is that town manager, select board, or joint?
I think it's joint.
Yeah, I think it's joint because
I do too.
the reference of the.
Okay, succession planning. Want to say more about that, Mark?
Well, I think it needs to go, at the staff level from Paul right into the staff so that we kind of know who's next if someone leaves, retires.
So it's not select board succession planning, yeah.
No, that's done by vote.
as much as some of us may want that, Paul. No, but
Yeah.
we've had this discussion
If
in
you
the
lived here,
past.
you could vote,
We had this discussion in the past of how many people are between the ages, of 50 and
Oh, yeah.
56 in town, and what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're all in that range.
Yeah, you've got a bubble that's going, that's,
Well, and if people
You're in
decide
the
to
end.
leave too, just where are we at?
Yeah.
What would be the next step? I mean, I'm used to doing
Well, I
that in
mean,
business.
I guess the thing on that is that, I haven't, I guess, a question about having it be a goal is, I don't think there should be expectations, as far as somebody being next in line, because that's, in some of them, that's part of our job, or that's part of
I
Paul's
mean,
job.
what does it mean? If we have a police chief
That's
who's
not-
near retirement
Yeah.
age, we have a deputy chief and
Right.
lieutenants.
So I think what he's asking is like
What's-
Darlene
Downey has an
identified.
assistant.
Well, who's
Darlene
next?
identified if something were to happen to her, this is who's next.
Well,
It
that-
doesn't,
that-
and it doesn't have to be a commitment to
Yeah,
who's
right.
next.
It
It's-
has
and
nothing to
can
do
be
with a
by-
commitment.
It can be, by the way, if something happened, okay, you brought up Darlene, right? If Darlene were to leave,
Yeah.
here are people that could do that job. This one may be able to step into it, this one may need more development. And some of this may be personnel stuff that we can't bring to a public meeting, but personally, I like the idea of, should we be doing succession planning for the town, so at least the town, if there is somebody that leaves, we either know we have a gap, and if that person leaves, we're gonna have to go look for somebody. And it's not a guarantee, by the way. Jobs still go out and get posted, viable
No, I
candidates still
think
get.
to that end
Well,
too,
that's not
to
what
make
it
your
is.
point is, Darlene's comment was always, if something were to happen to me tomorrow, the staff here can each do a portion of my job, so my job will get done until I'm
Right.
replaced.
Right.
That's the type of,
Well, I mean, I would
But
hope that,
don't we have that in every
I don't know.
yeah, I would
department
hope
though?
every department would have that at this point.
Do we?
I don't, do we?
Well, if I don't know what department wouldn't. I mean, every department has an assistant. The town clerk has an assistant town clerk, and
Right, but
others.
Treasurer.
that's
The
just
treasurer
a
has an
name.
assistant.
What's the gap between the assistant and being able to take over the job?
Well, it's significant in all the places. Has to
But
be.
what's the gap? So in other words,
And then
what
what do
would
you-
they,
what
what
would you
would
do
they
with the
need to
gap?
do if the person above them left?
Yeah.
Okay, first off, how would the department run in the meantime? Like you said with Darlene, maybe there's enough people there to keep it steady for 6 months.
Right.
But is the next person in line, are they on some kind of a plan or a path in order to go into that position?
And if they're not, what do you do?
If they're not, then maybe there's training, is there education, are there things that they need to do in order to prepare? Because that only helps them so they don't get overlooked, okay?
Right, but if you do that, then you're gonna have to increase their compensation. You got to give them a career path. For example, we historically don't have significant turnover in the community in terms of department heads.
Right.
So if you're the assistant in the finance director's office, and John Souza's mid-50s, and he's probably going to get 10 more years before he retires, what do you do with that person who's the assistant in terms of career path and development? To what end? So that basically they can leave?
Well,
You know,
first off, is that person suited, if John were to leave
Right.
tomorrow?
Yep.
Is that person suited to go into that position? If not, is that something that you could train them up, or is that something you need to go outside to hire? So
guess-
in other words, it's a plan for each one of these positions. It's not something that you,
It's a tool.
yeah, exactly.
Right, but
It's fairly commonly used.
It's an
I know it's
annual-
commonly
it's an
used.
annual tool.
I understand it's commonly used. I just don't know how it works in practice in the town where we're understaffed and you either got people, if people can't advance, they exit. And so I guess the question is what are we training them for? Are we qualifying them to exit? Is that what we're looking to do? Because if that's, in other words, John has had this assistant for years, Darlene's had an assistant for years. Where does it, I guess I'm trying to get
Building superintendent, if we had a succession plan,
Yep.
we would have had laid out on paper, we don't have an obvious successor internally for building superintendent. There's knowledge there that, okay, if that person leaves tomorrow, we've got to, post the job. But then there's also knowledge there that, gee, is there somebody that wants to, or that I should be trying to groom and grow a little bit more?
But I guess the point is, that if there's no path to growth, what are you grooming them for? No, and I'm serious with this question, and I don't mean it in a negative way. It's the problem is,
I'm not sitting there saying you're necessarily
I-
grooming them. I'm saying that you're identifying the gaps at a minimum.
But then what
So
do
in
you
other
do-
words, do we have a viable person to step in if X were to leave? So then the question's whether you train them or whether you identify the gaps, that's separate. But so that you kind of have a plan so that if someone left,
Yeah.
what do we have behind them? Is this an exterior? Do we close the gap for 6 months with other pieces, and then we go outside, we have to hire from outside, or?
Probably, I guess I don't see, cemetery, you got a cemetery director and
It's
some
not-
laborers.
It's not for every position.
Yes, I'm saying, I'm trying to figure out
It's not
where,
for- It's normally at the prime staff positions.
Right.
At the lead staff positions. So you don't do it for everybody.
Right.
You do it for, if you looked at your org chart, it may be for the top 6 or 7 spots.
my only concern is that often creates an expectation, and you have department heads who've been in place for dozen-plus years. Look how long Darlene's been there, John's been there. You go through that, Frank Green being another. If you were grooming these people over the years, I guess the question is grooming them to what? And that's,
Okay.
because I don't want to do is set an expectation that they're,
You're not necessarily grooming them. You're just identifying who the person would be to succeed that key person and what the gaps may be.
Right.
If that person could step in today, or if this would be an external hire.
okay, and then once you have that information, what do you do with it? Because if you have a gap, which
Well,
you're going to send that person for training
Well,
and conferences and so forth.
For instance,
Then
let's
when they
say
get that-
it's in the staff and you decide to leave.
Yep.
Okay? Now, the institutional knowledge that you have about the staff is gone. So you go back to the plan, you take a look. So if somebody else were leaving because you were leaving, we'd have an idea of what the next steps might be, or your successor may have an idea of what the next steps might be, with regard to the key staff positions. It's just,
What are the key staff positions?
we'd have to sit down and decide what
Because
those are.
we got a planning department of one planner. We got a business development department of one business development person. We've got an assessor's office of.
Let's start, how about DPW?
Okay, you've got a director and you've got division heads.
Oh, okay, so if the director
You got
leaves,
you got an assistant director. If the director leaves or falls ill tomorrow.
this isn't going anywhere.
No, but Mark, I'm just trying, here's
So
my
I'm
concern.
gonna just, you can
Mark,
take it
no,
off.
please leave it up there, because I'm not trying to argue, but I'm trying to do is temper expectations, because my concern would be if there's because we've had this arise, where people feel blocked, okay? And I don't want to do is give somebody this situation where we're going to groom you, and then the question becomes, as Virginia says, well, when the position becomes open, if or when, and it's more a question of if. And that's why we've not, for example, in all the years we've had people.
This is not, so let me back up. This is not necessarily, in my experience with succession plans,
Yeah.
they're not shared with the whole organization.
Exactly.
It's like with you
With
and
you
HR.
and us
Done.
and HR.
And
But-
maybe let me finish. If you're not understanding, I'm trying to help.
Okay.
Okay? So it's a plan that is thought through with your key department heads. It's documented. It's a private plan. It's not something that's shared with the public. It's not shared with the employees. And it provides a baseline of knowledge that says, well, gee, I only have one planner, right? And maybe, is there somebody down lower than that is somebody that could either fill in if that planner's gone, or, and it may be a peer even.
Right.
Right? And it's like, you think about two things. If the person is gone tomorrow, what am I gonna do? And even if that's interim, and there's a longer-term staffing thing that needs to be addressed, and if there is no reasonable way to fill it, like to fill the gap, or if the gap is too big, at least you have the knowledge of that and it's written down somewhere, and it's something that you manage year to year. But like I said, sometimes the succession can be sideways. It doesn't have to be bottoms up. And it's not something where you're saying, you know, hey, Pat, you're on Mark's succession plan to, you know, so we're gonna go give you extra training and development. That's not how it's used. It's like, okay, I know what the gaps are. Maybe Pat could benefit from her current position, and it would be a benefit to the organization to develop her further in this area. But it's not a guarantee. It's not it's not something that's widely distributed. It's a tool for you and HR and the board too, I think,
Yep.
if we can have access to it, to just know like who's where and how are we gonna manage if somebody gets hit by a bus tomorrow or leaves on their own. And by the way, if you, in my opinion is, if we invest in development of people and they have an opportunity that we can't give them here, I would rather they do that than stay here and not be developed and not grow, right? I mean, if there's a long path to succession and they can't get to, if some people don't want to move up, and that's okay. But if other people want to grow and there's no path here, I think we have to expect that people are going to leave. If you're hiring the best people, they're going to move around. It's, you know, if you're not hiring the best people or whatever, maybe they'll stay forever. But good people move around, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
We've in the past have emphasized cross-training, right? Pat, you've been around this where we've encouraged departments of people cross-trained in others' jobs. That to me is the equivalent of dealing with successor training.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we've done.
Well,
But
That's
we've
one
not-
form of it.
but
Yeah.
I don't recall in 15 years that I've been here that we've had a problem when a department head has ever left. And so I guess I think we should leave it up there because
This
I
idea-
want to better understand the
This
goal.
idea isn't in response to that.
Right.
This idea is just, you know, a way of documenting what the, again, as Virginia
Proactively.
mentioned, how we would fill, how the town would fill different slots. And you're right, sometimes there's only one. But if they can leave, then are there peers, are there other people that will fill that on an interim basis? Then this would go outside to hire, you know, just what's the plan across the board?
But I guess you say it's a document that's only viewed by the select board and HR.
No,
There's
it's
there's-
put
Probably
together
you
by
and
you
HR.
and HR, just to identify what those critical spots are and how they would be filled interim and permanently.
but shared with the select board.
Yeah, I mean.
But then it's not, then it's a public document.
If it's, then
Well,
maybe
then it
it
doesn't
is.
have
Then it's
to
a
be.
public
Then
document.
it
I
doesn't
guess
have
I would
to
ask, I mean, how do you know that's not done? I mean, how do
Yeah, I
you,
mean, we just filled the
Because he said
department,
it isn't.
no, we just filled the department head in the highway division, right?
Yeah, but Paul, we had another vacancy a while back, and this was before Mark brought up the idea, and I asked you, I said, do you have a succession plan? And you told me, no, we don't have that today. Is that correct?
I don't recall what
We don't have a-
position you speak
We don't have a formal succession plan,
for.
like what Mark's talking about.
I mean, all I can tell you is what I've experienced. When the health director retired, there was a succession plan, which just became, when Richard Day left, Sue Rosa was groomed for a succession plan. You know, when Jim Pearson left, Gary Persichetti stepped up. I mean, when Honorina left, Tricia stepped up. I think, and we can go on and on. I think we've met that goal. I guess I'm trying to, I want the goal, no, Mark, I want the goal up there because I want to understand what the board's concerned about, and I want to be able to respond to it. So I'm asking you, please don't drop the goal. To me, it's like the root cause thing, Mark. I want to understand it better, because I'm trying to understand what the concern is.
I get what, I understand, I mean, I think I understand what they're asking for. And, when for 3 years in a row now, it's come up with Darlene where she says, if I can't show up for work tomorrow for 6 or 8 weeks, because whatever.
Which happened, yeah.
Yeah, I know that this one can run payroll, this one can do accounts receivable, and this place will still run. That to me is the succession plan that we want to make sure versus.
That's cross-training. We've done that.
In one
That may
leg,
not be just one individual.
right, in one leg, but it could
But
be if she's
sometimes,
not returning, then, you know, what do you do? Because some stuff in town, like, you can't just put a hold while you're out looking to replace the person.
and there are also special skills that certain people have that no one else does have. So if that person isn't the one that comes back to work because they leave, how are you gonna fill that? You're gonna do it externally, consulting, how are you gonna fill that? Or does somebody else need to get trained in it? It really depends.
It sounds like an administrative responsibility, right?
Well, of course.
But I guess I
It's an
want
What do you mean by
organizational-
that?
What?
I guess I'm trying to understand what the board's concern
What do you
is.
mean by qualifying? What does an administrative qualification mean?
I guess I'm trying to understand I'm still trying, please keep it as a goal. We can discuss this at another time, because I'd like to understand it better. But
No,
I mean,
I'm just trying to understand, what did you mean when you said it's an administrative responsibility?
this pertains to an administrative responsibility of the town, not a policy of the town. It's administrative.
I would say so.
Right, so that's why I want to understand the board's concerns about, and I think we can't do it tonight. I think we put it up there, I want to follow it, but
It's not a concern, it's a suggestion
Right.
to have a formal succession plan.
if it weren't a concern, it wouldn't be a goal.
No, that's not true.
Well, no, that's absolutely not true.
Okay.
So you just said something that I disagree. You just said a formal succession plan, and that's what, I think I think that's different than what you've been talking about before, where if somebody were to be out for 6 months, they'd be able to fill in all the, all the tasks and all the functions that somebody does. I think that's different than having a formal succession plan.
Well, one thing Paul said earlier is that there are a lot of slots here where there's only one person. You're one person deep. Well, then, in those cases, those folks typically have all the knowledge, okay? And if they were to go out, by doing a formal succession plan, you can analyze what it is that they have from a knowledge base for that position and determine whether or not you have a plan in order to be able to fill that slot adequately on an interim basis and then long-term. And are there special skills? What would you do? It's a planning tool. It's done everywhere I've ever been in my life, okay? And so I just put it up there because I did ask about it at one point, if there was something like that. In fact, it was one of my first questions. And I found out that there wasn't, so I thought maybe it's a good idea to do it. I didn't realize I was going to get so much pushback on something that's very academic to management.
And what I'm saying, Mark, is we cross-train people and to
That's
fill in.
not a succession plan. That's,
Why, but you're assuming the succession plan is internal, and that's my point. Most of our succession plans in these major positions would be external.
It's about knowing what you have internally.
Yeah,
It doesn't preclude you from going externally.
right.
It's about
exactly.
knowing what you have.
Right, and you're, right.
What you might want to do to manage.
So
what
if
you
somebody,
have.
short of a catastrophic health issue, if there's a transition, we have time and we get the input of the person who's departing, and the rest of us move forward to fill that position. But we'll continue this discussion. Because I know, I can see it's very,
2 weeks' notice?
most division heads don't leave with 2 weeks' notice. We knew the highway superintendent was retiring several weeks in advance of when he was going to depart. We have expected dates of many of our department heads of when they may retire, and we do have internal understandings of how things will likely be slotted if that were to occur. But the last thing I'm going to do is put that on a piece of paper, because that can be demoralizing for a number of people,
They don't see
as well as create
They don't
other
see
issues
it,
for other folks. But I want to discuss this further, because I can see it's a very important issue of importance to the board. But, okay, so let's leave that up there.
Okay. I'm just going to go through these. Improved website comms. Is there something specific we want to work on this year? I still think the boards and committees list is not where we wanted it to be.
We're trying, we're actively, we're committed to finding a solution, but there isn't a solution
No, but
that's out there.
So even the old system, you could go in there and you could see like who was on it, how to contact them. That's what we have right now. You could see if you wanted to contact one of the officers, you knew who they were, And it's scattered. We're not collecting that data and putting it in
And I
there.
think it relates to the minutes and the other issues that were spoken of earlier from these committees. You're relying on volunteers. Okay, I've looked at the list, Virginia, because you've shared that concern with me. We often, I went to the town clerk, who is the chair of XY committee?
Right,
and
the
it's-
committee can tell you that.
And it shrugs. Just like minutes. Where are the minutes, right? But how hard can I push on people to get committee meeting minutes when they're volunteers? And we don't have staff to provide minutes for
No,
committees.
I get that. So the real question is should we continue with that board or committee?
Right. Legally, they have to have minutes.
Yes. And I've actively chased boards down for minutes over the years, including basically every 3 or 4 months, I go look at the list and plead for minutes. But if you've got a volunteer committee, how hard can you squeeze them when we
I get
When
what
you
you,
got committee-
I totally understand what you're saying, you know?
but what's the
I
solution?
know they're volunteers. Well, again, I just came back to the point is, should we continue or should we do something else? You know?
Or reappoint.
What's the real?
Reappoint, I don't know.
Well,
Consolidate.
It's easy to say we're gonna go to Plan B, but if you don't have a Plan B, it's kind of hard to leverage a Plan B. So for example, I don't want to single out a committee, but if you have a committee that's not producing minutes,
Yeah.
I don't know, call it we use one that doesn't exist anymore, the tax classification committee, right? I don't think they ever produced the minutes. Or the economic development committee hasn't had minutes, and go to the website, there's no minutes. What do I threaten them with?
Nothing, you really, I think we gotta sit down and decide whether or not we should even have the Economic Development Committee.
Okay. All right.
And whether we should
You know,
reappoint
maybe
the
we
people
should
that
then-
are on it if
maybe
they're not
we
going to
should-
do what's legally required.
Maybe we should put it on the agenda.
Okay.
Maybe we should have them come in to the select board meeting and talk to them about it. See if there's an issue there, or if there's something else we could do, or,
And what they may say is, we'd like a person to do minutes for us.
well, that's not, if it's
No,
not
but I'm
available.
not being, and then the problem becomes, one is, yeah, we could do that, but we can't find people to do minutes. For example, we've had requests from the Historic District Commission and so forth. We want somebody to take our minutes. Can you find us somebody to take our minutes? Take our minutes. Yes, we can't find these people. We know how hard it is to find somebody to do this board's minutes.
Yes, we do.
And so all I'm saying is in terms of getting responses from committees, it's hard to push volunteers.
So is that not worth having on the board?
I'm not saying it's not worth it.
Then why are we debating it now?
I
That's
just,
what why do we keep debating this stuff? Either it's a worthy thing to discuss,
Let's
and
discuss.
you know what, later on, if it becomes unworthy, we can take it off. But is it worthy or isn't it? It's pretty.
no, it's worthy.
academic.
It's worthy. We should have minutes, and we should have
I don't
good
understand how a
lists.
board personally exists without any kind of output.
That should be part of their onboarding too, not just taking an oath. Like, here's what the expectation of the board, here's what's legally required by the state of Massachusetts.
Yeah,
You
as
know, I mean,
opposed
if I'm
to,
a
because what
volunteer,
does
I
come,
take that very seriously, to know what
Yeah.
my commitment is.
as
And-
somebody that just recently onboarded, you get all the documentation, but if you're not diligent yourself
Right.
about going through it, because many people have jobs and families and commitments, they may not really know all that. And it's not that that's it's a commitment. That's all. Comes
So-
with it.
So we're saying this goes together?
Yeah.
These
It could.
can be combined as part of the same thought? I'm just trying to
I'm
like
fine.
simplify and
I'm
reduce.
fine however we combine.
So
it.
Virginia, I
and if
mean,
it's not
I
valid,
think what
take
you
it
just
off.
said, Virginia, I think what you just said is a good point. And maybe once a year or something like that, we should have town council come in and really require the chairs of these committees, especially a new chair, to come in and meet with them, so that town council can tell them what needs to be done, how, some committee members don't even know that you have to post a meeting 2 days in advance still. And that's pretty sad, but that's the case. And I think it's, like you said, it's a lot of time because they don't know. I mean, unfortunately, I've usually noticed that when you have somebody come in and try to give like a seminar on what the responsibilities are on a board or committee, or how to conduct a public hearing, it's usually the people that don't need it that come. But maybe it should be more of a requirement.
So this would be a joint one?
Yeah,
if it's gonna
That's fine.
include some of this other stuff too. If we keep it, it's
Yeah,
fine.
on improving the website communication, I don't, that's a huge topic.
Yeah, well, that's
So
why I
the-
asked, what specifically are we talking about?
That's a huge topic, and I'm wondering, like, Paul, you had said something at one point about another topic that maybe a listening committee, maybe, getting some input from folks that are having trouble finding different things, or that would, like, I always see something out there about project status, the key projects, to be able to see what the status is easily. But we've gotten so much input, I have, at least over the 10 years when I was on ZBA too, of people really struggling to try to find their information. And I'm not saying everybody's, literate, in how to search for documents. But I mean, people that I know that are literate that are having trouble. And I'm just wondering if we just, maybe there's 10 things we could look at. Maybe there's things that we could make adjustments to. I'm not talking about like wholesale, let's kick this down the road and just put something else up. But I always hear the comment that whatever we had here before seemed to be better than what we have here now, and I don't know what the difference is, because I don't recall the old one. Website itself, I have no recollection of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would need to get to some specific improvements that we.
Yeah.
Was it 2 years ago?
We did a
in
refresher to our
goals,
website. We did a refresher to our website 2 years ago.
Right.
And and the whole issue of the news page that's on there.
Yeah.
The problem is if I start explaining, it's going to be debating, so I'm not going to go into that again. But I'm telling you, if you don't educate, look at other communities' websites, and my question would be: is it if you can find better ones, let us know, because we're always looking at other people's websites to see others' concerns, and it really goes to my
Yeah.
bigger concern of communication with residents.
Right, but, I think it's smart to benchmark and look what's out there, but also, are there, do we get, Trish probably gets some, we all get comments, right? So if we took a look at a list of what those comments are there any improvements, minor things that we could make where things get bubbled up to the front where people will be able to see them easier? Just minor.
But I guess my point is, and my thing is you're relying on people going to the website. I think the answer is you got to go to the people.
How do you push it out?
You got to push it out, Mark. I think that's
Yeah.
the solution in
Well, that-
today's world.
Well, that was one of the things we were talking about, I thought,
Right.
was maybe
Yeah.
to invite them in, the people that are interested, to start to give us feedback on what those things are that we can make improvements on. And some of them maybe we can't right now, but maybe some of them we can. Because we could put communication on every year, because it's always the number one issue. It's communication, always.
But we don't address it. I don't see a commitment to addressing the communication issue.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Okay, so let's go to this.
So that's identifying a
Does
problem.
everybody agree this one needs to hit the list?
Yes, always should be.
Pam, you quiet over there. Yes? I agree with Paul. I don't think it gets buried under website because it's a bigger issue.
Right, because some people will never go to the website. I mean, a very good example is with the pink bags. I mean, look at how many people even
Yep.
can, didn't, and,
Right.
yeah, and it was right out there on the
Right.
front page
It went
for,
out on paper too, in the mail,
Yeah.
I thought.
did it?
Right, I agree. Absolutely.
But anyway,
So is this a joint goal, town manager?
I think that has to be a joint.
I'd say
It's
joint.
a joint goal.
Joint.
Yeah.
I think we all have responsibility on that one.
You okay with me on this one?
Yeah.
The COVID prep. Is this just developing a kind of a what-if plan?
I think it's a proactive plan.
Yeah.
I think within a
So
matter of a
we're
week,
ready.
school's going to open in a month. That's got to be in place right now in terms of what we almost a replication of what we did last year about having the stepped up
Yep.
HVAC investment in the schools and also looking at the capital improvements. So I think that's a standalone one.
Ken, what are you thinking?
No, I think it's standalone.
Right, okay, so is this town manager? Well, this is joint too, right? It all plays together.
No, I think that,
To bring it forward.
right, but I think it more falls on Paul. I think it's more him coming to us with what's going on and us being kept updated, not, I don't see how we would give him input on that topic to do a better job. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Root cause, you okay if I leave that with town manager? That's what it was last year. What's the?
I want the select board's input on that one, because it didn't move last year, right? I mean,
No?
it's,
Well, and I think we talked about,
Yeah.
like, we could have a select board member help work it with you, but the process, is that a select board goal? We gotta do that anyway, right?
Yeah,
I don't think this is debatable,
that's just
but
select board.
budget,
It's just my sort of pet peeve, but if there's no interest in,
I didn't say there was no interest.
Yeah,
Just
I
say
just-
more.
well, every year we talk about what's going on with taxes in the town and how expensive it is to live here, and, the Prop 2.5 is in place, and I'd like to see the budget stay in check over time. And I'm not saying, the budget's grown, has it grown faster than 2.5, would you say, Paul, or?
well, we've never exceeded Proposition 2.5, obviously.
Yeah, but you get new growth.
Override last time
But
I
of course,
checked,
of course, the budget grows more than 2.5%,
Yeah.
because you have growth and you have state aid. Of course, it grows greater than 2.5%. And now you're in an inflationary period.
Right.
So it makes it even more daunting. And the biggest one, and let's summarize what happened last year. The biggest investment is in education. And if one of the vision and values is quality education, that's where it all fell apart last year, right? Was at the meeting, yeah. So I don't know how that goal of 2.5%
Yeah.
materializes in the face of inflation, as well as a commitment to education.
Is there a different way? Is there a different way to talk about the objective in the form of a goal? So the common theme I keep hearing is, can we do more to take a harder look at how we slow the rate of growth of taxes?
Well, I know the argument there is we always have been, or we consistently have been over the last 15 or 20 years, number 68 to number 72 in the state as far as property tax goes. So we really aren't being outpaced by any other community. If nobody else on the board has concerns about the budget, maybe it's just me meeting with Paul one-on-one well before the budget process starts, just so I understand it
I
better
don't-
where the
I didn't
money's
say
coming
I
from.
don't have
Yeah.
concerns.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I guess, kind of where you're headed. I mean, preparing the budget is the responsibility of the town manager, and that's something that he has to do, no matter what. I guess I have a question with, putting specifics like that in gold, because that is something that's, that is discussed with us before it's all put in place. And that's done every year. So, I don't know. I mean,
Pat, I would say there's a budget process that we turn the crank and do every year, but I wouldn't say that we have, we allocate time for deeper conversations about this at all. We've never done that. It's always, here's the dollars, here's the constraints, but we've never had a deeper conversation about, are there more creative ways we could look at things in order to reduce the tax burden or slow the rate of growth of the tax burden. And that's qualitatively, I think that's what Ken was trying to get at last year.
But the problem in reality is when you come in with your fixed cost, there's little of discretionary. And here's what happens. You come in, you got to fund no, well, let me finish. When you fund your fixed costs, we've not added any positions on the general government side, but when you come in and fund your fixed costs of what the Neshoba tax assessment's going to be, what the retirement board's going to take from you, what the health insurance is going to take from you, what the trash contract's going to take from you.
It leaves
The-
30 million
yeah.
out of a $134 million budget.
Exactly. And then,
Oh, I know.
so what's left to do? And then if you've got the other problems that are resulting from it, like public works infrastructure, well, then how can I do that? Because the number one complaint that's on there is the road infrastructure. let me give you a quick preview in about 2 months. Darlene's going to come in here and give you the cash balance probably the end of this month of free cash. And then there's going to be a debate at town meeting, what do we do with the free cash? And yes, a portion will go to reduce the levy, as we promised.
Yep.
But then the debate comes, what do you do with the rest of it? And my answer is going to be, put it into your road infrastructure. But that's the trade-off, because we used $2 million this past year to balance the budget, okay? You keep doing that, you're going to fall off the cliff.
Yep.
And that's what the town did in the 5 years prior to
Previously.
my arrival.
Right.
So I guess my point is it sounds great. Why does the budget have to go up 2.5%? Well, again, we're not getting any state aid. So then where else is it going to come? You can't have if you're getting 1% additional state aid and your school budgets and the Neshoba Tech's budget's going up 3-4%.
Right, no,
It's a math exercise,
I-
and that's why if you say we haven't had
I've
much discussion.
reviewed the whole thing, so
And so,
I have other
again,
questions
I
about
understand
it,
it because it's
but-
very
Well,
popular. When
that's
the
where
every quarter it
I
goes
know.
out.
Excuse me, Paul, so that's where I go back to, if this is worth having, if it has value to have, is it, and I would ask you, Ken, because since you put it out there, but is it not so much about the number, but is it about setting the objective to have the deeper discussion on all these different factors? And maybe if the issue is we don't have enough state aid, and I know it's a long road to hoe, but are there other things that come out of that, like a different focus on grant funding, or a more organized focus on our state legislators? I don't know what the answer is, because 2 years ago, we also said, like, well, let's look at what income we get from grants and other sources, and we looked at it, but we just said, okay, well, this is what we got. We don't have the discussion, if there was one to be had, about how do we make it better so that when we get to fall town meeting, we do have something to give back to the taxpayer, if we're not going to agree that we, are comfortable trying to budget under the tax levy at the outset. But I guess the only question I'm left with is there some kind of bigger discussion to be had, or deeper discussion to be had, that we're not having as part of the normal budgeting process, that might reveal other objectives that are worthwhile working on over the next year or two, coming, couple of years? And
I
Ken,
guess
if that
my-
takes us totally off track of where you were, then
No.
tell
my-
me and I'll drop
My
it.
answer to that is, I'm not sure how to answer that. So I'm almost willing to, especially with how it went down last year, remove the budget 2.5%, and then personally commit to, being more involved or attending more of the, the budgeting sessions, maybe meeting with Paul one-on-one, just to understand exactly where everything's going and how it's working and what the thought process is behind it. We're going to revisit it next year.
Is everybody okay with that?
yeah, I'm fine with that.
So I'm gonna take this one off. This was mine. So, let me get to a microphone. My thought process was that I think that we have room for improvement in terms of our working relationships between board members, as well as our working relationship between the board and the town manager. And so my thought was, what if we just set up maybe even just a couple hours or half a day type workshop off-site with an independent facilitator? It would have to be a public meeting, but it doesn't have to be televised. So we could go somewhere neutral, not town hall, bring in an independent facilitator and help us just talk through communications, whatever. What does
I'm fine.
silence mean?
No, I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with it as long as there's buy-in by all the parties and they see benefit to it.
Paul?
Yeah, that's my full support.
Yeah, I agree with what Ken said, as long as there's buy-in.
So, I mean, if it's something the board thinks is worthwhile, I'd be happy to work with Paul to try to figure out where a resource might be that we could bring in, and
I don't even know if
Get
that
it
has
set
to
up.
be a goal.
it doesn't have, well, okay, maybe
We
it's
just-
not a goal.
We just do it as an understanding, because it's probably not something that's,
Just do it?
yeah.
Are you okay with that, Paul?
Yeah.
Right.
Otherwise, this goals list is gonna be
Right.
3 pages long.
It's not something we have to track or
Right.
publicly
It's a
track.
yeah, it's a one-time
So
thing.
I'm gonna say it's not a goal, but we're gonna do
Quarterly
it.
or something, but not public, not a,
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I do like your next one, the 54, I hadn't even thought of that, but maybe a longer-term plan of what we're gonna do with that site. I call it a site because it's just where we're at with it, but maybe that's the wrong word.
I don't even know if we could finish that goal this year, but I didn't know if it was worth at least starting a conversation.
My perspective on this is 54 Richardson Road is the only significantly owned town parcel that's not restricted for conservation or other uses. And therefore, the reason there is no long-term plan is because it's banked for whatever the future may be, 25, 50, or so many years from now. Simple answer.
What does that mean, Paul, that it's banked?
In other words, there's no, name me one other significant, there's no other significant sized parcel of town land that's unrestricted.
So if you were to need a facility
The
of some
town,
type,
exactly,
you can build it there.
exactly. That's why it has an ambiguous use.
Yeah.
There is no such one. So I don't know what
So
the
what-
idea of planning a future use when the whole point of it is having an undesignated parcel for unknown future use is the point of 54, which is why
So
we
what he's
never.
saying is he has a
Look at-
very long-term plan for it, which is
Yeah,
the
yeah.
unknown.
Right.
It's a bank account of a piece of land that if the town decides it needs a stadium or it needs, he's got a large piece of land sitting there that is not restricted by any
Right.
zoning or anything, that you can do what you want with.
It's not conservation, it's not school, it's
It's a
unencumbered.
long-term plan.
Should we
Right.
be should we be looking at the current use pending the outcome of the PFAS investigations? And whether we want to keep using that land as a DPW site?
Then that vows the converse. What do you do with the uses that are taking place in there now? Where do you put them?
Well, I know, that's my question.
And then
What
what
are,
does that
what
cost?
are our
What
options?
does that cost the town?
Well, it's not like a 6-month
No.
thing. Should we take a longer view of what are potential other uses for that land, or what might we want it for?
I mean, when we put the dog park there, it was like, well, if something were to rise in the future, we could relocate the dog park, right? When we got the dog park grant, the Stanton grant. So that's kind of what it is. It's that way, but you're right. I don't know.
Well,
So that was
Well,
reactionary, right?
No, that was proactive. There was a desire for a dog park. They identified this as the only parcel that's of any size
Yeah,
that you
it's
could put a
not like
dog
there's a
park in.
building there.
But it also didn't preclude anything in the future from a future use. But I guess the question is if you're in a budget situation, you're now basically going to incur the cost of acquiring land as well as the relocation and other operational costs. I guess we can do it. And then what do we do with it once we leave the site? We just leave it fallow? I mean,
That's-
other
well,
than,
that's
other
my
than
que-
being.
I
other
don't
than-
know the answer, Paul. I'm just bringing
Yeah.
up the thought of, is it something we want to talk about this year or not?
after the fire station gets relocated,
Right.
what happens to that area?
Well, you still have the fire mechanics operations there. You still have Chelmsford Telemedia using it there.
Right.
You still have the DPW yard storage there.
So you just keep
It
those?
keeps going. What's going on right now? I mean, the fire station is rather recent and rather temporary.
Yeah, no, I know.
But it's all those uses that were described over there, from fire maintenance to.
Where do we do maintenance right now for town vehicles and town assets?
The police vehicle maintenance is done at the police station. They have a maintenance bay. The DPW maintenance is done over at the Alpha Road site. And fire maintenance up until Richardson Road was done at Station 3 over on River Neck Road. And the problem there is they didn't have the adequate space for the lift and other stuff, so when DPW vacated, they immediately relocated over there. So it's spread out.
What,
And the problem
is there a benefit to looking at consolidating our repair?
There isn't
efforts?
enough space to do it. In other words, we've thought of it over the years about consolidated vehicle maintenance operations. The other problem is the police want and we can bring in the chiefs and have them talk about it, but the police chief wants a person at the police station on cruisers for rapid response in terms of issues. And then fire mechanic, the same thing when they roll as well. But you can have it as a discussion. We can bring the division heads in there, but we've had these internal discussions over the years in terms of, can we consolidate?
Do other towns do it that way?
it's all over the place. Some do, some don't. But most, even in towns where they're consolidated, you still have them deployed across the town. So, for example, in Natick, they have a consolidated maintenance, but there's still a mechanic working at the police station. So it may be consolidated control, but it's still dispersed operations.
All right, we got a long way to go here. So what do folks want to do with this one? Kill it or keep it in some form?
I mean, we have a lot of bigger fish to fry on that list, so.
Yeah.
And-
Kill
and
it
I-
for now?
I'd sideline it for now.
Yeah, and I think a lot's going to depend on what happens to the PFAS stuff,
Yeah,
too.
it
So,
does.
I'm sorry, what now?
a lot's going to depend on what happens with the PFAS anyway, so.
The infrastructure, public works infrastructure?
I think we should have a follow-up, traffic listening / sidewalk listening meeting.
Transportation, I think was what we're
Yeah.
calling it.
Transportation?
Transportation infrastructure listening session.
I think we're gonna try to do this in August anyway, to revisit Ledge Road. The options we looked at, including the executive session.
That would be-
Just talk about it now, since we know some of the other things are off the table.
Right, but it would be select board and town manager, I think.
But so that's gonna start to happen, but this transportation listening, transportation.
Although Click Fix wouldn't be in there.
Well, that's a
Well,
lot
again,
of
some of
the,
that might be in
a
the
lot of the
weeds, but
quick
I don't
fix
know.
is
Oh, okay.
transportation,
And
roads.
we've been pretty aggressive in the last few months of
All right,
paring through that.
so this one's gonna stay,
Yeah.
right? And is that a joint?
Joint.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Is there like a goal on the backlog with quick fix or click fix?
Yeah, we try to get them within 30 days or so.
30 days.
Yeah.
So should I kill that one?
I mean, I think
Is
we've
that
been,
just
we've
an
been,
operational
yeah,
thing
we've been
for
very
you?
active on that
Yeah.
in the last,
Well, although it would be nice if, after she puts an X, in the same way we get our traffic updates, maybe when the traffic updates, they could give us the turnaround time on Click Fix,
sure.
like what it's running at.
Or maybe
Even if
that's-
it's 35 days and then it drops to
Uh-huh.
28 and then it's
Sure.
20, that's fine. I mean,
Or if it goes way over, you know what I mean? It's not one day over.
Is Ledge Road a separate objective, or is it part of our ongoing what we're doing anyway? We've gotta keep on, we've gotta get back to it.
I banged my head on that ledge a lot, so.
Feels like a separate one. but-
No objections to having the meeting in August.
Nope. They'll give you all the support I can.
Road infrastructure, did you want that as a goal?
Yeah, like I said, I think you'll see that. And
What are we gonna do with it, Paul? What's, like, I brought it up, but I don't really have a clue. What are we gonna measure? What are we gonna try to do?
I think we're going to look at the roadway construction plan and, and the sidewalk one as well. I think it all falls from that transportation thing, listening session.
And when we get into that, maybe we can get some education on, high-level education on road construction, because it seems like, they pave a road in this town, and within like 3 to 5 years, it's starting to fall apart again sometimes. And some roads seem like they last forever, but I'm just wondering, do you buy different levels of quality of asphalt? What causes that? And again,
It's usage. It's why,
Which is-
it's why they resurface the highway much more frequently than we resurface Main Street. It's why 495 is gone, I mean, it really,
but sometimes some side streets look like they fall apart quicker than,
Right.
but we can talk about that later, but that's just some of the information that I'm looking for.
The town meeting warrant article process?
I don't know what to do with that.
I don't either, but I feel like it's gotta be better.
it's really, a lot of it's out of your domain, because
No,
it's, the
that's
planning
what-
board
that's what I
submits a
was
zoning
wondering.
article and it's not flushed out, it's,
I guess it would just be a matter of if we wanted to articulate something to communicate back to the boards and committees that provide articles, but. it's
Or
just
even something to John Curlin. I mean, I think he kind of feels like he owns town meeting, so, maybe a few years ago, he had a committee, one member from each precinct to come up with new rules for town meeting, and maybe it's time for him to do, maybe we should suggest that he do something like that again. Because I think it was very noticeable at the last town meeting how, people do an amendment and nobody understands that, and it makes it worse than better, and
Personally, I wouldn't, I'm not standing here advocating for doing away with amendments.
Sure.
My comment was
Yeah.
on the process, so that you don't have that problem when you get to town meeting floor.
well,
I don't think telling people they can't propose amendments is the right thing.
well, okay, that was my suggestion, but yeah, I understand what you're saying too. I mean, the process itself, yeah, if if the planning board isn't ready to present it,
Or
then.
is that simply their decision? And then we check the boxes, is it legal, is it?
Well, I think they learned from it, and I think they're not gonna do that again, so I don't
So
know.
maybe we take it off for now and see how things go for the fall.
It definitely has gotten worse each year.
Mm,
I know, it's,
But it really always comes around zoning articles.
exactly.
It's, because that's the stickiness of it.
But it could have been that bad this year because of COVID, because, and they didn't have time to meet and gut and vet.
they started
I don't know.
too late.
Blame everything on COVID, but,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know, I don't know what we can do with
We have
that.
bigger fish to fry right now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna skip those because they were my safe rooms. Let's go to these first.
I don't want to poo-poo those next two because they're very important. But I will say those two committees are so strong that even if they weren't on our agenda, they are doing great jobs on their
A lot of
own.
other committees.
Well, I mean, I think, last year we did have the age-friendly and the diversity committee as, to be sure that
Fostered them?
we monitored them and supported them. And I think it's the same thing, we should continue to do that, and with the clean energy and sustainability.
Well, right, because the diversity was new. Age friendly was going to their implementation plan phase
Right.
and getting approval from AARP.
Mhm.
And then this is new.
Right.
So I think they're three very strong committees. I say we just encourage them, support them in ways we
Yeah.
can, and foster
Right.
their growth.
Me
Yeah.
too.
Okay,
So
okay.
as a goal to support them, or?
Support,
I don't know. Does it-
updates, support.
Support
and-
Does it need
And
to,
I'm just trying to understand, are you suggesting keep it on the list, but it's in a support capacity, or take it off the list? Goals?
I personally, okay,
Go ahead, what do you?
Well, clean energy is new, so I think that's a group that we should probably support. The other ones, I totally agree, they're kind of up and running and doing a really good job.
Paul, what was your thought when you brought these up?
Well, they're not statutory committees, they're advisory committees, and therefore I think the whole question is, as you said, supporting and fostering what they're doing, but, if the feeling is that they're fine, and I think, yeah, we don't need them as
Yeah.
goals then, we can
I don't think so
just
either.
use them as support items.
But the board wants to keep this one in to support the startup activities.
I'm just throwing
Just
it
so we
out
keep
there.
our noodle on it.
If you
I
want
don't
to,
know what we
Do
would,
you
I
need
don't
a
know
goal
what we
for
would
that,
do.
or-
I mean, I think that at this point, satisfaction be have them come in and give periodic updates from those
Yeah.
three committees would be sufficient.
that'd be
Is it a
fine.
goal, or is it just something we program into the agenda?
I think it's just something you can program into the agendas.
Is everybody okay with
Yes.
that?
Yeah.
Fine with that.
Now, before, on a side note, Virginia, you threw the LGBTQ plus listening. What do you want to do with that?
It was a suggestion that was made to me, I don't know, I mean, if we don't wanna do it, I don't think it's the end of the world, but or maybe it's something. like,
Maybe it's something
as a
they do.
liaison, Pat,
Yeah.
maybe you could
Sure.
talk to this committee
Yeah.
about
Do it,
working
yeah.
with Rainbow Chelmsford on what can we do?
sure.
Yeah,
You wanna do it that way to start?
Yeah, because I find,
I don't wanna overstep either.
right,
I
and Rainbow Chelmsford's very active and strong. They're doing stuff around town, so, I think they
Well,
can, they
and I
can,
think they don't wanna step on the diversity committee, so maybe it's just a question of like Pat as the liaison to try to help facilitate a little bit more interaction.
she needs to be the
with each other.
bridge. Pat, you need to be the bridge.
Okay,
Bring them together for us. Thank you.
sure.
I'm just gonna- Okay. So now we're at,
255 Princeton.
yeah. This was the overall building housing supply.
So
Sounded good when you were
This
saying
go-
it.
maybe this
Know
goes
what it
back
looks
to-
like when we do it.
But maybe this goes back to sort of my underpinnings of budget. One of the things that I don't have a problem in town saying, we're growing the budget over 2.5 because of growth, but I think we should be more open about it, and how important it is to getting our budget, because, growth is important. We do need growth to keep services level, and unless you disagree with that, Paul.
No, I don't think that the point of the growth is to support the budget. I don't think that's ever been what we've tried to articulate. I don't think that's what the planning board does.
Okay.
If you ask the planning board point blank, their agenda is not to provide growth to support the town's operations. Nor do I think it works, quite frankly.
No, I'm not saying like that's the number one goal, but I'm saying that the growth does lend more revenue to dollars.
But oftentimes the growth costs more than the dollars. And that's clearly what I think is coming out with this study that they're doing about the number of school kids that'd be at 255 Princeton Street. But I think the problem there is it's going to come anyway. If you have 22 single-family homes, you're saddled with costs no matter what you do out there, because something is going to go there. And so my question is, and I think if you've seen the mood of the town in the last 6 to 9 months, it's the no growth
I agree.
mentality. And I guess, and that's coming, it's starting to, I think, rear itself at 255 Princeton Street, as it already did at Grist Mill too. And I think and I think the question is where do we want to be? I mean, let's acknowledge what happened at Grist Mill too. They came in for a determination of applicability and were given the go-ahead. Because at the time, they didn't want to do 9 Acton Road.
Right.
So then they went and spent all their engineering and legal and planning money, came back, and the popular sentiment was against it, and they killed it.
The wind blew the other way.
Right. And so, and I think you're starting to see now, with 255 Princeton Street, it's like, well, wait a minute. What are we doing? You know, we got traffic problems. I mean, I had a request come in.
You get water, you get sewer, you get all kinds of
Right, yeah.
things.
Well, you know, but the request came in from the developer. We want to meet with the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee because we heard concerns from residents about traffic. Now, we know they did a traffic analysis, but I guess the question, and then every time you see something pop up, you know, the duplexes on Route 40. Oh, how can that be? We don't, how can this be? We don't have sewer. Why are they putting duplexes there? You know, a simple triplex over the weekend was a minor skirmish about,
Where was that?
Dunstable Road. You know, a determination was made on a
missed that.
separate lot.
Yeah.
It involved the Vinyl Square Committee. I'm surprised you weren't copied on that, but I guess the question becomes, what is it that we're trying to do in terms of housing growth? Because,
So if that's the question, how do we get to the answer?
but I think that's the question is that's a driving thing, is what's the vision? What are we trying to do? Because I have a planner who's trying to figure it out. I'm trying to figure it out. I think the community's trying to figure it out. I think
So
the
what do you
planning
need?
board's feeling with it.
Yeah, I guess is what I'm asking.
I think there needs to be some kind of a discussion.
At what
Yeah.
level and by who?
I think it's the planning board, select board, school committee, at level of where is it we're trying to go? I mean, as you know, you heard from superintendent, they want to come in and do a request for a new high school or a new school and bring in the consultant to talk about where we're going. Well, where are we going? What do we want to be?
Paul, how
What's the direction that we want to be? I mean, as you said, a decade ago was real clear. Commercial growth, commercial growth, commercial growth. 129 beyond. And quite frankly, the tipping point in that was Route 40. Right? I mean, that's when it all fell apart. And since then, it's now veered towards,
Nothing.
nothing.
How does this that you're talking about here, Paul, how does that play into?
Because
No, let me finish my question.
okay.
If a developer or a property owner comes and says, I want to do this and it's legally permitted, how does this vision have any influence over that?
Because right now, the developer at 255 Princeton is looking for the support of the select board and planning board. And unless you have a vision, how do you lend them support? Right, because remember, they came in and they saw the two paths, friendly 40B, zoning change going forward.
But even
When zoning change.
And then they went zoning change, but the question's going to become, the select board, finance committee, and planning board are going to make recommendations if there's a warrant article. I don't think it's fair to move forward with them and then all of a sudden at the end say, nah, we don't support this, because I think what you end up doing is you're damaging the reputation of the town from a development perspective.
Yeah, they're gonna get gun shy.
That I definitely.
And, well, not only that, but you damage your town reputation from other people who want to come in.
Right.
Right, but, and I think kind of based on, on what you said, even though the planning board, the select board, and whoever else might be very much in favor of the vision, that doesn't make any guarantees.
Oh,
So,
certainly not.
that's the thing. I mean,
Right.
that's what I think has to be clear, but I think we do need to have that vision.
For me, it's also, what's the process for developing that vision? Like, do we have a public listening session? Tell them we're coming up with this? Because we could have the greatest vision in the world, and then there's gonna be pushback no matter what you come up with.
Yes, that's right.
Well, I mean, for years now, the planner of the town has said we need to get the house in order with all the boards talking and having a vision. And, I mean, to some extent, he's right? I mean, that's what we've arrived at today. We need a vision that's come up with 3 or 4 boards or, you know.
Are there, like the economic development, are they part of it? I don't know. They've never done them, something that's,
Yeah, or even the housing authority.
yeah.
But I don't know how to do that, Paul.
Housing Advisory Committee or Housing Authority?
Well, maybe both.
Yeah, no, I'm just, because, yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I think
housing
you-
authority's gonna give you their take, right?
right.
They're not
But
gonna
they-
look
but
at
but
it more
I mean,
strategically.
a request came today from David Hedison to Linda Prescott, and Evan was copied on it, saying, we want to go to community preservation, looking for money to support the Housing Authority's portion of 255 Princeton Street. Now you've got the Community Preservation Committee sort of deer in the headlights, quite frankly, but what do?
Maybe they
I
have to be
agree.
part of that too.
And I'm not saying what I don't know. I'm not saying what the right or wrong answer is, but the point is they're now, and unfortunately they're going to have to be at the lead of the parade because they're going to make their recommendation prior to the town meeting.
You know, it may be that we say we're gonna have a listening session, we tell all the boards and committees, like, maybe we have 2, maybe we have one for boards and
Yes.
committees. You guys can come and tell us, what's your, what stake do you have in this, or what stake do you wanna have in this? Right? Because we don't know what we don't know, and maybe CPC has some ideas so they don't have, wind up with deer in the headlights. And then maybe there's another listening session with the public.
I think that would make sense.
I'm just thinking out loud. Since we keep adding committees as we're talking, maybe we
Yeah,
ought to
yeah.
No,
ask
but
them
it's
if they want to
the
participate.
global question about
Yeah, right.
where are we trying to go as a community, and then it circles all the way back to sewer capacity and everything else from that. Because if the goal isn't for development, well then you're not going to go through the expense, effort, and aggravation of sewer capacity expansion.
So let me ask you this
Yeah,
question,
I'm
Paul.
not sure that
If,
it's gonna be required anyway.
if the majority of the towns and the boards come back and say, no more growth, as a town manager, how are you with that answer?
I don't set policy for the town. I'm the manager. I live
I'm
with
asking
it.
your opinion, though.
Well, I mean, I don't know how you do no more growth, because Westford doesn't have sewer, but they have growth.
Yeah, and people
Yeah,
have,
right. I mean,
private
right.
property can be developed, I mean.
Right.
Right,
no matter
you're
what.
right, but the problem is sewer is your facilitator of growth, clearly. I mean, that's why there's no sewer in Carlisle, folks. I mean, that's, because you don't need 2 acres if you're gonna do that. And so the question then becomes, and is, what is it that we want to be? Because, I mean, you see all the stuff, oh, they're trying to make this place a city, blah, 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 I mean, it's alarming because for years we were told, I mean, you've been around long enough, we were told, we got to do something about the town center. Boy, it looks horrible. You got the porta potty place, you got this, the other thing, right? And Grist Mill 1 was a struggle. There was a lot of pushback on Grist Mill 1 about it was going to, ruin the center, blah, 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 blah. And then it happened. And then, but then, like I said, between Grist Mill 1 and Grist Mill 2, there's been a sea change.
But put an asterisk there. It happened,
Right.
and most people I talk to don't even notice the building.
Right.
Like the pocket park and
Yep.
everything else that's back there.
Yep.
Appreciate the sound, the fact you can now see and hear the brook.
Mm-hmm.
And the wires are going underground, and appreciate all the change that went on there and how nice it looks now.
But that didn't translate into Grist Mill 2.
And there was no traffic. Like
Right.
nobody, you
Right,
never see a
exactly.
car coming in and out of there.
Right, exactly. That was, well, it was the same thing we tried to put a fire station, when we put the fire station here. This was going to be gridlock, right? Pat, you heard it. You weren't going to be, the fire department wasn't going to be able to respond because of the center school, and it was going to ruin property values and everything else. But it's, I guess the question is right, Ken, the lessons of Grist Mill 1 didn't translate to Grist Mill 2. And now the question of 9 Acton Road's still out there. And so I guess the question then becomes, when you start, now you pivot to a 255 Princeton Street or River Neck Road where Mercury Computer is, it's like, well, what becomes of that? And I think that's the struggle that's going on now, because we don't know what to tell people when they reach out to the planning department or the business development office of fulfillment center or housing
Paul,
development.
I
What
see
what are
that-
we supposed to do? And then I guess what I'm saying is, and then when we referred them, like we are with 255 Princeton Street, I'm not sure at this point in time there's a clear direction to Trammell Crow in terms of, where are you going with this?
So to me, this translates into,
Why should we, go ahead.
this is a goal for the town manager to get these, hold on, just hear me out, to get these boards together so you have a clean vision, so you know where the boards in town want you to go.
But that's backwards. The board, the direction and policy comes from the elected boards.
Policy thing.
No, yes, it is. It's a vision for the town. The planning board, and it kind of goes back to the issue of root causes, is if you've got elected boards, multiple elected jurisdictions between your Board of Health, your who didn't want septic, right? Remember, you got a planning board, a Board of Health that doesn't want septic, right? And you got a planning board.
It
and you
doesn't
got-
want sewer.
right, exactly. So
Absolutely.
that's what I'm saying. So I think there has to be some collective vision for the community about where do we want to be 10 years from now, 20 years from now as a community.
But
I don't know that we have that.
Who takes charge of that to make that vision, to discover the vision, write it down?
Into even my
1 to 3 years.
strategic
Yeah,
thinking
exactly.
by department.
Right.
But that's all gotta fall under some overarching, so Carl, you've just gone from something specific to 255 Princeton and housing to overall vision.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, we heard it on the sidewalks, right? I got hammered at town meeting by the woman who couldn't have the sidewalk from, up off of Westford Road to the center school. Well, there is no plan for the town to create sidewalks throughout the town.
Right.
Or is there? That's what I'm saying. What is it that we're trying to do? Because it goes to
Where
the
would be a
issue.
city?
It goes to the issue of infrastructure and all the sidewalks and listening sessions and transportation listening sessions and in terms of, well, where are we trying to be?
Mm-hmm.
And you remember 255, come back 255 Princeton Street, the original discussions were this age-in-place facility, remember? It was gonna be, they were gonna go there, and then you'd be independent living, and then you'd have a little more, and then you'd be, and then when the question was asked of the developer, would you make it 55 plus, the developer said no. I'm not saying what's right or what's wrong, I'm just saying is, what is it that we're trying to do? And those issues came up on Route 40 too, about when they talked about David Hedison building housing and affordable housing and apartments off of Route 40. And then that all went away too.
Well, Paul, so we've talked for 8
10
minutes
minutes,
now
yeah.
with tons of his examples. How do we get to the solution to
What's
that?
what's the goal? I'm still.
That's what I'm saying, what's the vision?
What are we articulating the goal as? Help me with that.
I think it comes down to what's the vision for the community?
Well, in growth.
Because a lot of
yeah.
this stuff all falls from that. Sewer capacity, transportation.
But you're jumping way ahead. That vision comes out of discussions with all of these parties that
Right.
are involved. So who brings it together, fosters the discussion?
I think it's the chief executive board of the town, which is the select board, quite frankly.
I said that 10 minutes ago.
Okay, no, but I think that's what it is. I mean, I think that if there's anything you can do as a chief executive board of the town, it's convene. You can't compel, but I think you can convene folks to say, hey, folks, where are we going?
So you're saying to conduct visioning session,
Yeah, I mean, right now, the planning board's wrapping up, apparently, their
I'm
master
hard-pressed-
plan.
I'm hard pressed to say that between September and June, we have the timeline to do some comprehensive vision establishment for the town. I mean, think about even just the master plan, that takes over a year for them to just update, much less create, right? So what I'm trying, I think what I'm hearing is you're suggesting, and I do, Paul, I think it's a joint objective, if it's an objective, but I think you're suggesting conducting some visioning sessions or trying to, right, you're mentioning different boards and committees that never get together to talk, and then it's all interrelated. It's almost like the strategic plan for the town,
Right.
which is where I was down there.
It kind of is. It's kind of a growth strategy for the town.
Right.
It may not be growth if the town doesn't want to grow.
But that's
what
how
it is.
you present it.
Right.
It could end up being that the growth strategy is 0.1%. But
I
it's a
see what you're
growth
saying.
strategy for the town, and I think it should be between the select board, FinCom, town manager, planning board, to start. You can't have everybody and their brother, maybe the school too. If you know, and have them to start to sit down and talk about it. That would make sense to start to put together a draft, at least, of a strategy.
School committee? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I think
school committee
FinCom
has to be, yeah.
and school committee.
Yep, she's got it.
And it's what's the growth strategy for the town?
That's how I see, when I boil it down, that's what
Or
it
is
sounds like to me.
Is it just to start the strategic thinking process for the town?
I like growth strategy, because I think that's gonna get people out, and if you end up with the strategy
I
is,
think that's what it
Strategy
is.
is no growth, then we know what it is.
Right.
Right, exactly.
You
You
would or
always
you
put
would
the
not?
I would,
positive
I would
thing.
use growth strategy, because that's gonna drive people to show up.
Yeah, and even if it, like you said, even if it's zero, that's.
Yeah, that's still a growth strategy.
That's growth.
Right, yeah. Because and from that will flow a lot of these other things.
How do we become urban?
We don't, the answer is we don't want to
Or
become.
how do we,
No, rural, that
How
was
do
the
we not
name. How do we
become
become
urban?
rural?
I mean, that
No
might be it.
difference.
Okay. So we've been at it almost 2 hours. If people are I would suggest that I just knock those other two off. The comms for the
'Cause they'll come
select
under
board,
there.
we can talk about at the work session or ongoing. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay, so, so we can go back through and say, how are we gonna measure these? Or based on the discussion and what I remember, I can take a pass and maybe work a little bit with Paul at laying it out and putting it in a packet for another meeting.
Yeah, then we can look at
Are
it.
you guys comfortable with that?
Modify, yeah.
And what I'll do, I'll take pictures of these before I leave, and I'll at least send you guys all the pictures of the flip charts.
You could take them
Okay.
home.
Huh?
You could take them home.
I'm gonna take them home, but I'm also gonna share them
Oh, okay.
with pictures for you, because I'm not photocopying them or scanning them in.
Okay.
Okay, does that work?
Yep.
So, do we have a motion?
I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second the motion.
Motion and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 4-0, 1 absent.